Raphael writes into Beyond at IGN.com just like you can. It says, hello, Beyond crew.
Hello.
You guys can't imagine how excited I am that Amplitude is back. The game was perfection back in the day, and with the first release screens make it look more Wipeout-ish. That said, is it okay for Harmonix to kickstart the game?
Oh,
isn't this a Sony IP?
Here we go.
Shouldn't they just fund it? Makes me think Harmonix really wanted to do it, but didn't want to take the risk. While Sony didn't want to do it at all, but said, if you can pay for it, go ahead. Your thoughts?
Does that question come from Colin M. in
San
Francisco, California?
The senator from Long Island has the floor.
No, I don't think it's okay, but I mean, it's we've been down this road a million times, right? Like, I think especially for big developers, established developers like Harmonix, even though they're kind of a shadow of what they were maybe a few years ago, it's wrong. It's just inherently wrong for them to kickstart these games. They can get capital on the private capital market. They can find an investor or an angel of some sort to give them the money they need. And I don't think it's right that these companies kickstart these games. I understand if you want the game, like, more power to you. I'm not saying you shouldn't kickstart games. I'm just saying that, like, they're doing it with you incur all of the risk. They incur none of the risk. You know, they are right. Like, every dollar they make is going to be profit. You know, like, because they didn't pay for the game's development. So they got all the money up front. So when people say it's like a glorified pre-order, it is, except for the fact that, you know, a pre-order usually comes for a game that's been in development for a few years, that's being published and supported by another company, and I just think it's unsavory. I mean, that's just where I stand on it,
right.
Especially for big companies like this. And when it comes to it's so weird and sordid because Sony does own that name, so
right.
Like, Sony has to endorse this. But then if they only need $750,000, like, you don't believe in the game that much that you won't give them $750,000. That's nothing. You know, God of War costs like what, $50 million or something to make. It's like, that's nothing. That's like
right.
no money. Like, you don't even think you'll make that back? So
I don't know if it's that right as much as, like, I think this is a sticky situation that Sony does own the IP, right? So they have this. Harmonix wants to make it because, like, fans never shut up about it.
Right.
People like me and Mitch talk about it all the fucking time. And so they understand that, but Sony has their books and ledgers and everything else they have to keep straight, right? You know, I majored in business at one point.
What, $1.2 billion?
Yeah, and so they have their plan for the next few years. So maybe, I mean, yes, you know, $700,000 to them is a drop in the bucket, but it's a drop in the bucket that they didn't plan for right now. And I thought it was interesting. Mitch wrote a story. You know, he talked to John Drake about how this happened, and it started with an IM to Adam Boyes, right? It was like, we want to do this as a passion project, and then it just went from there and got really quickly to this point where now it is a possibility.
Yeah, I don't inherently disagree with you, Colin. I certainly don't feel as strongly. For me, it just comes down to, with Kickstarter, I know you're coming at it from a much deeper perspective, and that's a sound thing to do. But for me, it's, you know, the Kickstarter, it's very clear up front. You know that you are taking the risk of, if you back it for $20 or $40, you know that maybe you're not going to see that, and you know that you're not going to profit off the back of it. I think if there's nothing shady about it, I think the expectations are laid out up front. So that's where I just have no problem with Kickstarter. So it's like, you know, if you have those objections, then, you know, you don't have to back it. But, you know, if you are psyched for it, jump in. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, to be clear, like, my most anticipated game of the year is Shovel Knight. That's a Kickstarter game,
right?
Yeah. But I didn't support it. I'll be happy to buy it.
Yeah.
When it comes out. And it's the same thing when Mighty Number 9 was announced, which is by Inafune. It was my favorite. You know, Mega Man 3 is my favorite game of all time. Everyone's like, "You're gonna break now." And I'm like, "No, I won't. I'm not supporting that game. Like, I'll buy it when it comes out. I will
you want to support
happy.
the traditional method,
right? Exactly. And it's not that the traditional method is like this untouchable thing. Obviously, the traditional method of having a publisher has largely disappeared for indie games, especially on PlayStation, where they can self-publish. And kind of get away with it, like, you know, cutting out the middleman or whatever. And I understand that these situations are rife with risk, you know. And I have no problem with these games being made. I have no problem with people paying for them ahead of time, and they know what they're getting into, and that's totally great. To me, it's like everyone always says, like, this is free market capitalism, and I'm like, no, it's not. It's a free market, but it's not capitalism. That's not capitalism, and that's donations being given to people that then use your money to make a game and then keep everything that comes from it.
But would you rather a publisher take a huge cut of that through a traditionally, or would you rather your money go straight to the developer?
I think that,
you know, we have an industry where big name developers are closing left and right. You know, it's a really difficult industry. Is this a good thing to have effectively your pre-order money go 100% to the developer rather than 50% of it to Activision or somebody?
Sure, but like I'm not so worried in the traditional sense where the money ends up that I give them. What I'm interested in is when you pay for a game in its pre-production stage or even pre-production stage, you don't know what you're going to get at the back end. And I like the idea of saying like, okay, like this game's announced 2 years before it comes out, Game X. Publisher Y is publishing the game. We see more and more of it. It sounds really promising. The more you see of it, this game's not really shaping out. This game's not really shaking out. And then the reviews come out. It gets like a 5 or 6. You're not interested in buying anymore. Well, that's fine. You didn't lose anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the publisher lost the money. That's their problem. You know? And like to me, that is actually pro-consumer and safeguards the consumer against making bad investments. Now, I'm not saying that like people don't have the right to do with their money what they want, because that is what the situation is. And again, it is free market. Like to say like, do what you want with your money. We want your money. We have this product. We'll give you the product in return. I just don't have it. Like what happened with Oculus was a great example, like the perfect example of why this is bullshit. And like when that happened, I was like, I told you guys. Like they kickstarted. They had an angel investor that probably gave them like a couple $1 million. Then they went on Kickstarter and they raised like $16 or $20 million, whatever it was. Then they used that money to make proof of concept that encouraged other investors to come. Then those investors sold the thing that was kickstarted and made $2 billion. Like to me, I'm like, wow, that like when I read that, I was like, that's fucked up. Like they basically just abused that system to make a ton of money, and it was because games don't scale to the level that Oculus and hardware often scale to. You're not going to see that kind of thing often happen, but publishers do step in to kickstarted games and they don't assume the risk, you know what I mean? Or Kickstarters fail and then publishers go and save them, but
right.
But it's already been proven. So this safeguards publishers. I don't think it safeguards developers, because developers are going to make their games regardless. They don't have to have a publisher. They can publish it themselves. They can find capital themselves. So I think that the issue is multifaceted and very complicated. And I vacillated a little bit on how I feel about it in terms of like my visceral anger about it, which I used to have like real, like I used to be like really mad about Kickstarter. Now I'm like, whatever, if you want to do what you want to do, but it's also telling and illustrating its own story as time goes on, that a lot of these projects are failing, people are disappearing with the money, and things like Oculus happen where they just make a shitload of money based on your own money being, proof of concepted. So it's a complicated issue, but I hope people understand where I'm coming from when I say that. I want these games to be made. I want people to enjoy good games, and I want the developers to make money.
I mean, see, for me, and I think we were tweeting back and forth about this at the time. It's you're not an investor when you donate to the Oculus Kickstarter, and Facebook buying it for $2 billion just means you're going to get you went from maybe a 50% chance of ever seeing the product that you backed being made to like a 98% chance, and it's probably going to be even better than you can imagine because they have the full muscle of Facebook supporting them. So when I donate my $100 or whatever it is to Oculus, which I mean I didn't, but just in a hypothetical example, it's I thinking, wow, a really cool VR headset, the kind of thing we've dreamt about for years and years and years, going back to when those old VR setups would happen in the mall, with the pods, and you put on the helmet and you hold the joystick thing. It's like, wow, a real cool one in my home. Like, yeah, I'm willing to, I'm going to put my $100 in and hope that I get a headset, and hope that I get one in time. And then, oh, wow, they got bought for $2 billion by Facebook. John Carmack's running the whole thing. I'm going to get this product, and it's going to be amazing now. And I helped make that happen.
See, I'm in your camp with it, and I that's my same thing, right? If I'm I donated to Amplitude, right? Like, I'm donating because I want that product, and I want those people to succeed. And so I know the risks that maybe hypothetically, if I had donated Oculus, they got by Facebook, that would have been like, awesome for you guys. I did that. But then there were these people, right, who flipped out at that announcement of, now Facebook's going to ruin it and blah, 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 and I never would have donated if I knew that. Well, it's like,
but it's not only that.
Spoilers, you should have known that.
But people weren't. I mean, there were people that were upset that Facebook specifically acquired Oculus, but that wasn't what people were mad about. What people were mad about was saying, like, the spirit of what we were trying to do was anti-establishment,
sure,
and that we were giving you money to create a proof of concept, not to convince other investors to give you money and then blow up your company and walk away.
Yeah, I understand.
And so, that is the problem, I think. In the realist sense, it's not the product, it's not the idea, it's not because there are games there's so much shit on Kickstarter where I'm like, I would totally buy this.
Yeah,
it's just the order of operations that I have a problem with. That's it. And I mean, the story hasn't changed. Right? We have a conversation with Colin about this. We've talked about this on podcast Beyond a million times. The story really hasn't changed. It's just, I just kind of wonder where crowdsourcing is going. And I know that, the idea that I've had already exists in some form, which is to say, like, sell shares of your product. Like, if you really believe in your game, like, if you need $100,000, just say we need 20 people to give us $5,000, and we will own 50% of the game. You will each own your own 5% of the game, and then we will split the profits. If that shit existed, I'd give money to all sorts of games. Because I'd be like, fuck, like Mighty Number 9 is going to be a huge game.
Well,
and
it blew away its Kickstarter goals.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know. And it's gonna be on Vita, which is unbelievable. And it was like,
Nothing's on Vita.
And it's like I would have given, if Inafune was like $20,000 gets you, 4% or something like that. I'd be like, okay, but it's. I just have an inherent problem with it because I don't want people. Free market capitalism is getting rich or succeeding based on taking risks. That's the whole point, and. That's what I have in it. That's all I take issue with. So, I wish these games well. I wish Amplitude well. Amplitude is certainly going to be just fine by the looks of it, by the first day that they've accrued X amount of money. But I just wonder what it says about the market where you can't find an investor.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of shit on Kickstarter that the market doesn't want.
Right.
But remember, we're dragging this on more, Greg.
This is we're a conversational podcast.
But publishers are becoming so much more risk averse. We're seeing it. I mean,
That's true.
The middle class of gaming is gone.
Yeah.
The great games that existed in the PlayStation 2 original Xbox era, some of my favorite games, I mean, there's a Japanese game that Namco did for Xbox. It was an exclusive called Breakdown. It was this first person. I don't know if you get. The looks on your faces tell me you guys didn't play this game, but
no, I don't either.
It was a almost pre-Mirror's Edge-esque, like completely committed to first person science fiction story. It was basically a melee game, first person melee game. Where you just wake up mysteriously, you eat a burger and then vomit it up immediately, all in first.
Just like me.
Go look it up on YouTube, trust me. But just this incredible science fiction game. But it's the kind of game where today that would never get greenlit.
Sure.
There is no middle class of games left. Sadly, much like our own country, we have the one person. We have the super haves and the super have nots. You got all these. Look at PlayStation 4. You've got these super indie titles, which are great. But then you've got these super AAAs like Infamous. Right. You have nothing in between anymore.
There's no more THQ. THQ isn't here to publish the mid-tier games.
That's part of it, yeah. But yeah, and I feel like, Kickstarter offers a chance to, in a risk-averse publisher environment, to get some of these games made that probably would never, that obviously would, because, of course, every game that's on Kickstarter, they've obviously pitched it. And most or all publishers have turned it down or said, well, I'm not so sure. So, I think it's a chance to get some games made that we wouldn't ordinarily have had a chance to get made.
That's true. That's a good point. I also think it's a control issue too. I think publishers, a lot of these guys don't want publishers in their shit anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's very true.
And that publishers adversely affect games often with the decisions
like
that
movie
they make.
studios.
Exactly.
Right.
So I think that's a totally legitimate qualm. To remove the middleman.
Yep.
But you don't need a publisher to have money. So you just need someone with money.
But this is an easy way to do it with no risk.